The film begins in the future, on the shores of the lonely island, where a young lady with a sword at the ready stands frozen at the water's edge. She looks at a lonely figure frozen in the distance on the top of a hill. History moves into the past. A brief historical flashback explains that one day a hole in the ground, known as a seam, opened up. From there come monsters called world destroyers. The men fought them, but lost as wounds from the destroyers turned them into monsters called hybrids. Then, instead of men, women, who had a higher immunity to the wounds of destroyers, entered the battle. Led by a brave general who looked like a reincarnated Joan of Arc, the women fought off the monsters and closed the gap. It's all part of the story the father tells his daughter Willie. According to the man, periodically in the history of mankind, cataclysms occur and new invaders attack them in order to destroy them. But always after a period of desolation, there comes a revival. Enemies are defeated, people rejoice. But the girl, the daughter of this same victorious general, does not want to listen to the story repeated 100 times. Instead, she yearned for the story of the mythical lumberjack and hero Kodiak, who fights alone against the destroyers. According to legend, he defeated hundreds of opponents with one barrel. On Willie's 15th birthday, her father and mother give her knitted gifts, a hat and a dog, which the girl, with childish spontaneity, calls Bear. The celebration is interrupted by the appearance of the mother's subordinate warriors. It turns out that another seam has opened, and now civilians must evacuate the city to safety, and the women's battalions will go to defend the borders of their homeland. When I load my dad into the back of the truck, they don't want to take him at first, but how do I approach hybrids during the moving process? However, the lame veteran managed to convince the guard that he was fine. Being intimately familiar with the symptoms and threat posed by hybrids, the father vows to be the first to suggest shooting himself if anything happens. During the trip, the female soldiers discuss how the men are more primitive than them and therefore more susceptible to infection and treatment. Villa stands up for her father, who, in her opinion, fought alongside Kodiak himself, but her comrades do not believe in the existence of the legendary hero. The Pope himself prefers to remain silent, without causing unnecessary controversy. Having fallen asleep on the road, Villa wakes up when a convoy approaches. Shots are heard outside and destroyers attack. One of the monsters punches a hole in the canvas body, dragging the victim out. While running, civilians get out of the truck. Dad and Willa crawl under the truck to hide. Climbing under the transport, they come across a couple of equally smart refugees. But they were less fortunate. The monsters reached out to them with their greedy tentacles. The tow truck looks under the truck and notices Willa and her father. But here the fighting mother comes to the rescue. After firing the clip of the monster, she cuts off its head with her service sword. After dragging the family out, the mother tells the father and daughter to go to the coast, from where they move to a secluded island where they have a summer house. It's safe there, and Mom will come there herself as soon as she puts her things away. Along the way, they pass an injured man who is about to become a hybrid. A guard stood over him with a machine gun to stop the rampage. In the forest, soldiers prepare to hold the line to slow down the destroyers. Civilians continue their journey in splendid isolation. At dawn, father and daughter reach an old pier where a motorboat is parked. But before they can shoot him, a mysterious stranger appears with a gun and a wound in the shoulder. At gunpoint, he demands to be taken away from here. The father invites the stranger to go to the car parked in the trunk, in which fuel for the boat is hidden, while the girl guards the ship. Approaching the car, Dad takes a knife out of his pocket. Soon he returns to Villa, carefully hides the pistol in his pocket, and lies that the evil uncle, frightened by the noise in the forest, cowardly ran away. They then board and sail to the island. This is how a year goes by. Wandering around the expanses of the island, Villa admires the explosions that thunder across the ground. Noticing a seagull that has built a nest in the coastal rocks, she, at the risk of falling, makes her way there along a steep wall to profit from fresh eggs. There's only one thing left for divorce. The right approach, if you think about it. Villa returns to the house where her bearded father is chopping wood. When she points out the loot, the man expresses displeasure that his daughter risked her life. In response, the girl notes that she is now old enough to serve in the army and fight destroyers. Then the father suggests organizing a control sparring. The convincing defeat of the smug young warrior ends with the fracture of the training sword, Raskolnikov's blade, broken by the handle of the axe. In the evening, to drive away melancholy and loneliness, the father tells another story about Kodiak. How he cut down the forest, and then saw a crack that opened and began to cut down the destroyers. Kodiak became the first person to kill the destroyer and taught the others how to cut off their heads. Given the details Dad knows about the mythical character, Willa suspects that he is a woodcutter. The next day, while her father is mining the steps to the beach to prevent uninvited guests from climbing up unnoticed, the girl collects stones. Then they look through binoculars at the destroyers occupying the shore of the mainland. According to Father, they did not suspect that there was anyone on the island, otherwise they would have already crossed the strait to distribute them. He also states that the hybrids are telepathically connected to the invading monsters and act as scouts as the incubation period progresses. The islanders then head deep into the forest, where Willa completes a timed obstacle course as part of the future fighter-destroyers training. The father tirelessly encourages the girl, despite the fact that something falls face down in the dirt. In the finale, he makes her swing a wooden sword, practicing cutting off the heads of monsters. After the first run, without allowing her to really catch her breath, the man takes her for a second run. The enemies won't wait. In the evening, after digging in the garden, Villa's father brings him a reward for his efforts in his studies. Several strawberries that miraculously survived on the island. While she's having fun, her ancestor tells her that her mother loved strawberries so much that they even had strawberry cake at their wedding. One afternoon, while refilling water near a waterfall, Willa notices the figure of another teenage girl wandering along the beach. Noticing Villa, the guest runs to her. Remembering that the beach is mined, the islander runs to the meeting in order to stop the stranger at the last moment. She had already grabbed the sting, but had not yet pulled it out. Having asked the guest to leave, Villa leads her to one of the coastal caves, where she has made a lair for herself. They're sitting inside, the girls are talking. It turns out that the new girl's name is Rosie. She, her father, and brother try to sail away from land, but their boat was capsized by the destroyers. Having hit her head, Rosie lost contact with her loved ones. Then the current carried her to the shore of the island. And now she's here all alone, lost, scared, and dry-headed. Returning home, Villa suddenly hears a voice calling her name. This turns out to be the mother who arrived on the island. She announces that her daughter urgently needs to join the armed forces to repel her enemies. Villa remembers her father, but at that moment her mother begins to scream at her, and her eyes bleed. Sign of transformation into a hybrid. It turns out to be a nightmare. Waking up in a cave, the girl leaves Rosie with a tied bear dog and runs home so that her father does not suspect anything. Worried about his daughter, he goes everywhere and meets her with a gun in his hands. Villa remembers seeing a gun on the man who threatened them near the boat a year ago. In the evening, she wonders, if he killed destroyers and hybrids, can he kill a human? The father admits that he would have done this if the man had threatened his family. He also states that they are low on supplies. There are almost no canned food left, and in such conditions it will not be possible to eat from a garden. Waking up in the middle of the night, Willa steals several cans of canned food to take to Rosie's cave. Apparently, she ignored her father's words about the lack of food. She also shows her new friend a photo album depicting a happy life before the destroyers invaded. She also tells the story of Kodiak and gives Rosie a knitted hat to say goodbye. He has a head wound and needs heat protection. The next day, an inspired Willa again overcomes the half obstacles. Without making a single mistake, she sets her own speed record, after which the father proposes a training fight with a hybrid, which he himself portrays. However, during the event, he instantly falls ill and loses consciousness. The frightened girl pours water on him to convince him. Willa takes her father back to the building, where he admits that she is finally ready to fight. The man takes out a real sword. He promised his wife that he would give his daughter only when she was ready. The next morning, the girl leaves home under the pretext of checking rabbit traps. She herself moves to a cave, where instead of her friend they find torn gifts, a hat, and a dog named Bear. Rosie sits a little further away and sits on all fours. She is transformed into a formidable hybrid and attacks Villa. In an instant, forgetting everything her father taught her, the girl comes under attack from a monster hanging from above. At this moment, the father appears in the cave with a gun. He shoots at the hybrid, but the monster's bullets do not take them, but only slow them down. As the monster approaches, the man uses a sword hidden in a cane to stab Rosie's ex in the head, damaging her brain and thus killing her. After making sure that his daughter is not injured or infected, the father says that they urgently need to leave. The hybrid has already sent a telepathic signal to the destroyers, and they will be here soon. The problem is that the boat is parked on the other side of the island. They rush there, but on the way they decide to stop in the middle of the island to rest. Villa falls asleep in her father's arms after listening to his stories. When the girl wakes up, they continue on their way. They must go through the gap through which the tree was thrown. Remembering her training, Villa easily makes it to the other side. Turning, she watched as the hybrid, brother of the deceased Rosie, crept up to her father. Willa cuts off the monster's head, but it is still able to move and fight. It was only when the father crushed the severed head and brain that the hybrid stopped functioning and fell straight into the crevice. Soon they hear the roar of another hybrid. The father of the dead monsters is chasing them. Villa is forced into battle because her own father is tired from the long journey. Drawing her sword, the girl waits for the attacking hybrid to dodge and, at the right moment, open his skull on the move. Continuing on, the couple reached a slope overlooking the bay where a boat was moored. They hear the explosions of mines on the shore and the roar of approaching destroyers. Then the man orders his daughter to get off and fly away. He will keep the monsters at bay. It turns out that he is injured and will soon become a hybrid himself. Willa runs downstairs while Dad prepares for the final battle with the samurai. Below, a girl unsuccessfully tries to push a heavy boat, but it keeps getting stuck in the logs. Realizing she has nowhere to go, Willa draws her sword, ready to fight. At this moment, she hears the roar of approaching engines. Several boats with soldiers led by the mother rush to the island. The father, bleeding from his eyes and losing consciousness, convinced that help is at hand, turns to the approaching group of destroyers, sword drawn. And at this moment, the film ends.